The Dunning-Kruger effect, the inverted trap of ability and cognition. In 1995, the Pittsburgh police received a call from a bank. The scene on the security camera left the officers both amused and exasperated. A man wearing sunglasses swaggered into the bank, pointed a gun at the teller, and demanded a transfer. No disguise whatsoever. It wasn't that he forgot to cover up. He genuinely believed he was invisible. He'd heard someone say, lemon juice works as invisible ink. So he reasoned that a face covered in lemon juice would make him undetectable by security cameras. He even checked his invisibility in the mirror before the heist. This robber, named MacArthur Wheeler, later became the face of a classic case in psychology. When psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger saw the news, they suddenly realized this absurd behavior, being abysmally incompetent yet absurdly confident, might not be an anomaly. The research they conducted afterward led to a key concept in psychology, the Dunning-Kruger effect, a scientific discovery born from experiment. In 1999, Dunning and Kruger ran an experiment at Cornell University. They recruited 161 undergrads and had them complete 3 tasks: logical reasoning, grammar correction, and a humor assessment. First, the students were asked to self-assess how well they thought they did compared to everyone else, in terms of percentile. Then the researchers compared those self-assessments to the actual results. The findings were surprising. In all 3 tasks, the bottom 25% of performers, those who did the worst, almost all thought their abilities were above average. For example, in the grammar test, the lowest scoring students thought they'd gotten an average of 61% correct, when their actual score was only 42%. On the flip side, the top 25% of performers, the best ones, generally underestimated their abilities. In the logical reasoning task, for instance, the highest scorers thought they ranked around the 30th percentile, but they were actually in the top 10%. Based on this experiment, Dunning and Kruger proposed, in areas where they lack skill, incompetent people often can't accurately judge their own abilities. This makes them fall into a cognitive bias of overestimating themselves and underestimating others. At the same time, they also lack the ability to recognize real talent in others, kind of like someone who doesn't know how to play chess. They can't see how bad their own game is, and they can't understand a master's strategy either. The psychology behind it, the blind spot of metacognition. The Dunning-Kruger effect boils down to a lack of metacognitive ability. Metacognition, simply put, is thinking about your own thinking. For example, after writing a report, being able to objectively judge, do I have enough evidence here? Or after finishing a task, clearly realizing, which part of this wasted my time? The core problem for incompetent people is that they don't have enough knowledge or experience to establish a correct standard for judgment. It's like a novice cook. Since they've never tasted a truly good braised pork, they might think their soy sauce-drenched disaster of a dish is delicious. A Michelin-starred chef, though, would immediately notice the heat was off by 3 minutes, or you added 5 grams too much sugar. It's not that the chef is pickier, it's that they know the standard for delicious, and they can see how far they are from that standard. Even more interesting, Dunning and Kruger also identified a cognitive curve. When people start learning from a place of low ability, they first go through a blind confidence phase, the peak of the Dunning-Kruger effect. As they gain more knowledge, they suddenly plummet into the valley of despair, realizing their own shortcomings. Only by continuing to learn can they slowly climb into the steady confidence phase, where they objectively understand their abilities. Real-world applications, the cognitive traps hiding in daily life. 1. The workplace. Where does the illusion I could be CEO come from? A tech company in Seattle had a telling incident. Tom, a sales rep, made the company's top 10% in sales for 2 straight quarters. He then applied to headquarters for a promotion to Northwest Regional Sales Director. In his application, he wrote, "I can handle the toughest clients. Managing a team is just copying my method to others." 3 months later, though, Tom's promotion was rejected. HR's evaluation noted that his team management plan ignored market differences between cities, had no protocols for handling customer complaints, and didn't even mention that regional budget approval requires coordinating with 3 departments. Tom was furious. "They just don't want to give me a raise." It wasn't until he was temporarily put in charge of a small 5-person team that he realized tasks like coordinating everyone's schedules and resolving cross-departmental conflicts were 10 times more complicated than he'd thought. This is a classic example of the Dunning-Kruger effect at work. Abilities for entry-level jobs, like sales or coding, are usually visible and tangible. But abilities for management roles, like planning or communication, are more hidden. Incompetent people mistake the part they understand for the whole picture. It's like a programmer who only knows how to code might think. A CTO is just someone who codes faster. They don't realize a CTO also has to judge tech directions, balance costs and efficiency, skills that are outside their cognitive range, so they can't understand or evaluate them. 2. Education. The misconception, my paper deserves an A. Sarah, a sociology professor at a New England liberal arts college, meets the same type of student every year. After midterm papers are graded, some students come to her with a C+ on their transcript, confused and asking, "My ideas are so original. Why did I get such a low grade?" Once, a student named Emily even brought her first draft to argue. I cited 3 sources, analyzed social media's impact on young people, and my logic is solid. Sarah opened the paper and pointed to a paragraph. You claim 80% of young people are addicted to social media, but that stat comes from an entertainment blog, no academic source. And you say social media causes higher depression rates, but you didn't consider the reverse causality. People with depression might rely more on social media. Emily was stunned. She'd never realized academic papers need rigorous sources, or that proving causality means ruling out other variables. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect among students, because they don't understand academic standards. They judge their work by what feels right to them, not realizing the real standards are way more complex than they think. It's like a beginner painter who thinks, as long as it looks realistic, it's good. They don't understand that artists also have to consider lighting, composition, and color harmony. These invisible standards are why they overestimate themselves. 3. Public sphere. The myth, I know more about medicine than doctors. In 2020, a group of anti-maskers emerged in a certain country. One of them, a construction worker named Mark, posted videos on social media claiming, "Masks cause hypoxia, and COVID is a hoax." He even shared photos of himself going to the grocery store without a mask every day. In his videos, he said, "I checked 3 websites, they all say this. Doctors just want to sell medicine." It wasn't until Mark's mother was hospitalized with COVID, and he saw the patients in the ICU, that he suddenly realized he was wrong. Later, in an interview, he said, "I thought checking a few websites meant knowing medicine. But those sites didn't even get the basics right, like how the virus spreads. I didn't even know the medical definition of hypoxia, but I still dared to say masks cause it." Behind this phenomenon is the Dunning-Kruger effect extending into professional fields. When a field has high knowledge barriers like medicine or law, incompetent people can't understand the jargon, so they mistakenly think the professional knowledge is simple. They confuse fragmented bits of information with a complete body of knowledge, and their own subjective judgment with objective fact. It's like someone who's never studied law might think, going to court is just arguing what's right. They don't know about the nuances of legal provisions or evidence rules. These complex professional details are outside their cognition, so they overestimate their own judgment. How to escape the Dunning-Kruger cognitive trap? The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't a sign of stupidity. It's a natural flaw in human cognition. Everyone can fall into this bias in areas they're not good at. To avoid its impact, try these 3 steps. First, actively seek counterfeedback. Don't just listen to praise. Find professionals in the field and ask for their opinions. For example, if you want a promotion at work, talk to the current director and ask, "What are the 3 most frustrating things you deal with every day?" If you're writing a paper, ask your professor, "What's the biggest improvement this essay needs?" This feedback helps you see blind spots you didn't notice. Second, learn metacognitive techniques. Before making a judgment, ask yourself 3 questions. Do I have all the information I need? Am I relying on assumptions I'm taking for granted? If I'm wrong, where might I be wrong? For example, before thinking masks cause hypoxia, look up the medical definition of hypoxia and how masks work for breathability. This kind of thinking helps you avoid subjective guesswork. Third, accept the limits of your own cognition. No one is good at everything. Admitting I don't know isn't weakness, it's rationality. As Einstein said, "I see far only because I stand on the shoulders of giants." True confidence isn't thinking, I know everything. It's knowing what I don't know and being willing to learn to fill those gaps. The takeaway from the Dunning-Kruger effect. Stay cognitively humble. MacArthur Wheeler's absurd heist, Tom's failed promotion, Emily's paper misunderstanding. These cases seem ridiculous, but they hold a deep truth. Human cognition is like an iceberg. The known we can see is just the tip above the water. The vast unknown beneath the surface is far bigger. The scary part of the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't that it makes us overestimate ourselves. It's that it makes us think the tip of the iceberg is the whole thing. The key to escaping the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't chasing, knowing everything. It's staying cognitively humble, recognizing your own shortcomings, being willing to listen to different perspectives, and adjusting your self-perception as you learn. As Dunning said in later research, true wisdom begins with acknowledging one's own ignorance. When we can see our abilities objectively, we can avoid falling into the trap of blind confidence and move forward more steadily and farther.